But Mark Patterson will be joining us. He comes from Lawrence originally, but he was in town in central Otago as part of a rural health strategy. Oh, God, I hate that word. And that is Te Whātau Ora, or the Ministry of Health, depending upon which way you call them. But did you know that they are still, just quietly, they are still calling themselves Te Whātau Ora on their Google site? Mind you, when you go to it, they call themselves the Ministry of Health or Health New Zealand Te Whātau Ora. I don't mind there being a Maori name for a government department. I just don't expect it. Yeah, that looks better now. Thanks, Josh. I don't know what happened there. But anyhow, he and the Minister of Mental Health, and I didn't realise Rural Health Services, Matt Ducey, doing a tiki tour of the country, talking to rural communities. And here's the joke. We've been talking about whānau ora and about government agencies and services delivering to Maori and Pacific Island folk, those poor people. Can I say, in comparison to rural New Zealand, your average urban Maori or Pacific Island resident receives way better health care than rural New Zealand. Rural New Zealand is a mess. And I was listening to, and I went to this particular meeting at which the Minister of Rural Health, Matt Ducey, was speaking, and he spoke to a large group of people in Wanaka who flocked out of just about everywhere. I don't think there was a seat in the house in the community hall, because they were complaining about all the things they weren't getting that were frequently and freely available to folk who lived in urban New Zealand or even in provincial towns in New Zealand. But given the fact that for some strange reason Wanaka's deemed rural, they get nothing, and if they do get anything, they've got to pay for it, which seems inordinately wrong. But Matt Ducey, the Minister of Rural Health, was pointing out to the assembled folk who were there at the meeting this. He was saying, and it was extraordinary, I can remember looking, and other people were looking at me too, and we were looking at each other going, what? He said that the reason that large growing areas of New Zealand had inadequate services, and he was talking about, I guess, the Wanakas of this world, the Nelsons of this world, the Selwyns of this world, of the South Island, but there would also obviously be fast-growing provincial areas in the North Island as well. The reason that their health services weren't as good, and wait for this, Josh, is because the Statistics Department and the Health Planning Unit of Te Whātau Ora didn't gather up-to-date statistics as to do with population growth, Josh. Can you believe that?
It's ridiculous.
So they actually didn't know, and this is a classic example, they didn't know that Wanaka, for example, along with Selwyn, but Wanaka in particular, was one of the fastest growing areas of New Zealand. It had been for the last, 5, 6, 7 years. But their statistics were so bad, Josh, they didn't know that. So therefore, none of the funding that would normally attend population, that would go for population to look after health, had been apportioned because, we don't have those stats. And he then told us, the Minister of Health, Rural Health, Matt Ducey, who's also the Minister of Mental Health, he also made the point that, now, and this is the bit that I just found really frightening, you said, and he put it back onto the community, and in this particular case on the Wanaka community, you're going to have to make a case. I'll help you, and that's why I'm here. But you're going to have to make a case to Health New Zealand for improved access and services. Now, and I just sat there and went, isn't this the effing job of Health New Zealand? I mean, it's not hard. I mean, if the Department of Statistics, isn't they just down the road in Wellington? Can't you just go and get the population growth and then just double check it with perhaps, say, your local council? And it's just 2 phone calls, isn't it, Josh?
I think so.
But
it just seems like complete incompetence.
To believe, but to be told that in actual fact, the reason you don't have the health services that you need is because the Health Te Whātua Ora, or the Ministry of Health, for the last 10 years have had inadequate data to be able to determine which areas of New Zealand are growing and which are declining, and then just simply to shift the health resources and the funding to meet the health needs of, well, where it's growing. It's just extraordinary. It was sort of this is systemic central government failure of a huge proportion, and Matt Ducey made that point this week. The Associate Minister of Agriculture, Mark Patterson's just popped out of a meeting to be with us now. Mark, you've just heard my introduction. It's extraordinary, isn't it, that the Ministry of Health just can't keep up with the most basic of facts.
Look, I'm sorry, Michael. I didn't actually catch.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was saying that I was at a meeting with Matt Ducey was there, and the people were saying, for God's sake, we're not getting any health services, and the health services we are getting are inadequate or we have to pay for. And Matt Ducey's saying, well, the real reason for this is because the Ministry of Health, Te Whātua Ora, over years now have had the wrong information, haven't been applying the funding to the population, particularly where the population's been growing, and as a consequence, small communities, well, large communities like Wanaka have now got to make cases to get that funding because, well, Te Whātua Ora hasn't been doing its job properly. I find that extraordinary, Mark.
It is staggering, and they've been historically lifting or assessing the population growth at 2%. And of course, as you know, around Central Lakes, Wanaka, Queenstown, it's been between 8 and 9% compounding for a number of years. So, and it's just broken the system now, and we're going to have to, have an intervention there.
Yes, but the thing that's extraordinary is that why isn't this their basic job, Mark? I mean, isn't their job to know? I mean, they've got a census, presumably. They've got upgoing statistics. They can talk to their local councils just to check. But they don't, and even I understand, I heard Matt Ducey say that when local councils said your figures are wrong, Te Whātua Ora got on their high horse and said, no, they're not, and then just carried on regardless. Does anybody lose their job when that kind of incompetence is at an institutional level?
Well, I'm not sure. Look, I don't know that detail, but I do know that they did swap over to the council figures at some point in the recent past and have acknowledged that they're well behind the eight ball. So I guess from our perspective, it's the making good that really counts here now. But yeah, how
I understand that.
Place,
but at the same
staggering.
time, for God's sake, there should be accountability for people who are probably on $250,000 a year plus and frankly stuff it up like this. That's what irritates us all so much. Okay, the Ministry of Health now has set a direction for improving health and well-being of people in rural communities, but it's over the next 10 years. Can people afford to wait that long to get the services that they require?
No, well, it's the number one issue when I get around the country is the primary healthcare provision in rural New Zealand, and it is really stretched like a Shanghai. So we've got a lot of work to do to unwind this postcode lottery that's developed over time. So you're right, 10 years is way too long. But I think you can also we're starting to see some results. Money going into after-hours care, extending after-hours care in regions, money into the capitation that was announced last week. So some of this, getting the money out of the back room and out to the front line is starting to show through, but we're under a lot of pressure.
No, I understand that you've got straitened circumstances, you haven't got a large sum of money. So if you've got, say, Vote Health, for example, Mark, you're obviously going to have to apportion money that's within Vote Health and reapportion it so you are actually delivering rural health services. Which areas have you identified within Vote Health can have that money taken from them?
Well, I don't know about money taken from them, but there's some really, from the outside, perceivably simple stuff that we could do. Like one of the biggest issues, in fact, the biggest issue I hear when I'm out and about is just trying to find someone within the organisation that can make a decision. There has been, this behemoth that we've set up, was set up under the last government in the middle of the pandemic, and as we reorganising that just to get it to a state where the Lawrence Medical Centre or the Wanaka Health Centre can ring up and know that they've got someone that can make a decision around some funding. So that's just streamlining those systems, and we are regionalising to a degree. Again, we've split it into sort of 4 different areas, and then some regionalisation beyond that, or some localisation beyond that. But it's just some really fundamental stuff like that. So we're trying to build the plane. Well, we're flying it a little bit here, but I can tell you we're doing our absolute best.
No, I understand that, and that's why you've ended up in places like Wanaka having these public meetings saying what's the problem, and you would have got that in spades. Listen, the other thing that strikes me is that there was a desire to centralise all of New Zealand. I think Hipkins did that in 2022 or 2021. Having World One Health New Zealand organisation, Rob Campbell was meant to make all that work. Did that make things worse rather than better, Mark?